I want you to picture someone you know, like maybe it's a colleague or just someone from your wider professional circle.
We all know at least one person like this.
Right. And they aren't the smartest person in the room. They definitely aren't working the longest hours. And honestly, they might not even be the most inherently talented.
Oh, absolutely not.
But somehow, they always land on their feet. When the company restructures and half the floor is let go, they get promoted.
It's like magic.
Yeah. When resources are incredibly scarce, their department's budget just mysteriously goes up. They always seem to have the right allies, and they fundamentally thrive while everyone else around them is burning out, grinding their teeth, and struggling.
Which is incredibly frustrating to watch.
It really is. You look at this dynamic and you just think, I mean, this makes no sense. This is profoundly unfair.
It is entirely natural to feel that frustration, because we are heavily conditioned to believe that merit and sheer brute force hard work should be the ultimate equalizers in life.
Right, like the system rewards the most virtuous grinder.
Exactly. But when you observe someone who effortlessly glides through systemic chaos like that, you aren't actually looking at luck.
No.
No, you are watching a very specific, deeply pragmatic, and honestly somewhat ruthless set of survival rules in action.
And deciphering those rules is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we're taking a fascinating and highly controversial ancient Chinese text and translating its core philosophy into English for a modern context.
It's called the Xiaorenjing.
Yeah, which translates roughly to the Book of the Petty Person. We've got a comprehensive analysis of this text, which centers entirely on a legendary and polarizing historical figure named Feng Dao.
Just to set the stage for you here, our objective is not to sit around and debate morality or pass ethical judgments.
We're not doing that today.
Right. The text doesn't care about what should be. It only cares about what is. We are hunting for the ultimate unwritten rules of survival in a chaotic world.
So we're essentially distilling a masterclass on how to navigate modern everyday disruptions. Whether that's a collapsing industry or a toxic corporate buyout, but we're doing it by using some deeply uncomfortable yet undeniably effective ancient wisdom.
Well said. Let's establish the context of Feng Dao's world first, because it puts any modern workplace drama to absolute shame.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about a period in Chinese history known as the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms.
Right.
And to grasp the absolute terrifying chaos of this era, just consider the math for a second. This period lasted just 53 years.
Just 53.
In those 53 years, there were 5 different dynasties and 14 different emperors. The average ruler lasted less than 4 years.
It was a world entirely on fire. The central authority of the old empire had completely collapsed.
Yeah.
You had warlords fighting block by block, province by province. The common people were living in a state of perpetual terror, subject to massacres, famine, looting.
Just horrible conditions.
Really grim. And the fundamental premise you have to internalize to understand this text is that in an era where structural order completely evaporates, morality becomes a luxury. Survival becomes the absolute, overriding, primary objective.
I was actually trying to map this onto a modern equivalent to really feel the stakes.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so imagine working for a sprawling multinational company that burns through 5 different CEOs in 3 years.
Wow.
Like, complete structural collapse and hostile takeovers every few months. The standard loyalty playbook tells you to, put your head down, do your job, and pledge allegiance to the current boss.
Right, just write it out.
But in that environment, tying your identity to the CEO gets you fired the moment they are ousted.
Exactly.
And in Feng Dao's case, it literally gets your head chopped off along with your boss.
Literally. The officials who practiced that textbook, unwavering loyalty during the 5 dynasties, died gruesome deaths alongside their doomed emperors.
Yeah, they were purged the moment the regime changed.
But Feng Dao navigated this bloodbath by serving 11 different emperors.
11?
Yes, across all 5 of those back-to-back dynasties. He didn't just survive, he thrived.
It's what?
He rose to the rank of prime minister, amassed significant wealth and influence, and lived peacefully into his 80s.
He literally died a natural death in his own bed.
Which brings us to the great historical irony here.
Right, because for 1,000 years after his death, historians and moral philosophers absolutely despised him.
Oh, they hated him.
Famous Orthodox scholars like Yangshu and Sima Guang just dragged his legacy through the mud. They labeled him a disloyal, shameless, petty person.
Which is where the title of the book comes from.
Exactly. They saw his survival not as a triumph of strategy, but as a total failure of moral character.
But the sheer irony of their criticism is staggering when you look at the outcomes.
How so?
Well, many of the moralists who criticized Feng Dao, both during his life and centuries after, died violent, miserable deaths themselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were consistently destroyed by the very political machinery and moral rigidity they championed. They wrote beautiful essays about loyalty while being led to the executioner's block.
While Feng Dao, on the other hand, stayed alive.
Exactly. And the Shaoran Jing breaks down the mechanics of his survival using 3 highly counterintuitive rules,
Let's get into those.
starting with how he positioned his own value.
So let's dissect that first rule, which the source material calls value anchoring.
Right.
And the core directive here is basically to never become someone's core asset. Which, I mean, on the surface, that sounds completely backwards.
It really does.
Because if I want job security, shouldn't my goal be to become my boss's most indispensable, highly valued asset?
Well, it sounds counterintuitive until you actually examine the underlying causality of power. Because if you become a single emperor's or a single manager's core asset, your fate is now exclusively tethered to theirs.
Okay, I see.
You're part of their localized immune system. If they catch a political cold and fall, you fall with them.
Because the incoming regime views you as an extension of the person they just destroyed.
Exactly. Feng Dao survived by actively decoupling his value from the individual sitting on the throne. He didn't offer personal loyalty to a warlord. He offered the operational manual to the state itself.
So he essentially made himself the ultimate technocrat.
Yeah.
Like, a warlord might know how to command an army and breach a city wall, but once they sit on the throne, they have absolutely no idea how to run a grain tax system.
Or organize a census.
Or manage a sprawling civil bureaucracy. So
Right.
Feng Dao steps in and says, I don't care who wears the crown, but you need me to make the kingdom actually function?
He monopolized the institutional memory.
Wow.
By mastering the unglamorous, complex mechanics of civil administration. He made the cost of executing him far greater than the cost of keeping him.
The new guy needs the taxes.
The incoming warlord would look at him and realize that killing Feng Dao meant the tax revenue would stop flowing the very next morning.
That is brilliant.
You exhibit your value across structural dimensions so that everyone in the system recognizes your worth, independent of the current leadership.
But what happens in the messy middle?
What do you mean?
Well, it's one thing to be a highly valuable administrator when a new regime is established, right? But when 2 massive egos are actively fighting a civil war for the throne, how do you avoid picking the losing side? That transition period seems like the deadliest part.
Which brings us to his second mechanism, strategic silence. In highly volatile environments, the greatest risk is information asymmetry.
Okay.
When everything is chaotic and the outcome is uncertain, declaring your stance makes you a definitive target.
You're exposing your hand.
Exactly. You are giving your enemies actionable intelligence. People often believe that jumping into the fray and loudly declaring loyalty during a crisis projects strength and conviction.
Because that's what we're told to do.
But it doesn't. It merely exposes your vulnerabilities and limits your future options.
So Feng Dao just removed himself from the equation entirely during the conflict.
He used silence as a sponge, not a void.
Ooh, I like that.
He would sit in court, completely quiet, while other officials argued, fought, and staked their lives on various factions. He let the warlords bleed each other out and reveal their strategies.
And he just watched.
Only when the victor was glaringly obvious, or when his voice could act as the definitive, undeniable final strike to settle the matter, would he finally speak.
He conserved his political capital until it had maximum purchasing power.
Exactly.
I follow the logic there, but I have to push back hard on rule number 3.
Go for it.
The text calls it weaponized weakness. It argues that in a system with concentrated power, looking strong makes you a threat, so you should intentionally project a weak, humble, and agreeable persona.
Yes.
Wait, the entire modern professional playbook tells us to project confidence. We are told to lean in, establish our presence, act like the alpha in the room.
Sure.
If you act weak and agreeable in a ruthless corporate environment today, you just get stepped on and passed over. Like, is this just an excuse for being a coward?
Yeah.
How does looking weak actually keep you alive and powerful?
It requires a fundamental shift in how you view the people in charge. This isn't about being a passive victim. It is deliberate threat level management.
Threat level management. Okay, explain that.
Consider the psychology of a warlord or, a highly aggressive, newly appointed corporate executive. They are deeply paranoid.
Oh, for sure.
They are constantly scanning their environment for threats to their authority. If you project strength, ambition, and dominance, you trigger their alpha immune system.
You essentially paint a target on your own back by trying to look impressive.
Precisely. You immediately become a rival that needs to be neutralized. Feng Dao understood this psychological trigger. He utilized weakness as tactical camouflage.
Tactical camouflage.
Yes, like a martial artist pretending to be off balance to open up their opponent. By projecting a warm, agreeable, almost boringly administrative persona, he systematically bypassed their threat detection radar.
So the warlords looked at him and thought, this guy's useful, but he's harmless. He has no ambition to overthrow me.
Right. And once they categorized him as non-threatening, they dropped their guard and granted him access to incredible resources and inside information.
Ah.
He gained immense structural power by refusing to compete for superficial dominance.
It really reminds me of the ancient philosopher Laozi, who said the highest good is like water.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
It benefits all things, settles in the lowest places, and does not compete, yet it can carve through solid rock over time. Feng Dao just played the role of water.
And in doing so, he exposes some profoundly uncomfortable truths about human nature, which the Sharon Jing transitions into detailing next.
Right, because once you strip away the romanticized notions of honor and loyalty, you are left with the raw mechanics of how humans actually interact when survival is on the line.
Exactly. The text shatters the illusion of unconditional ties, and it does so brutally.
Yeah, it asserts that everyone, including you, the listener, is fundamentally driven by interests.
It forces us to stop looking at relationships as static bonds of eternal friendship and start looking at them as transactional equity.
And the concept of transactional equity is vital here. We naturally want to believe that if we build a good relationship with a colleague or a mentor, that bond will sustain itself indefinitely based on shared history.
We all want to believe that.
But the text argues this is a fatal delusion. Our relationship is an active ecosystem. You cannot continually extract favors or loyalty based on past affection.
Right.
You have to constantly inject new value or the relationship dries up.
It's like a bank account that needs constant recharging.
Exactly. When the political winds shift, the people you thought loved you will often reveal that they merely loved the useful version of you.
And acknowledging that continuous asymmetrical value exchange feels cynical at first glance.
Super cynical.
But if you actually accept it, it makes you incredibly proactive.
Yeah.
You stop lazily assuming people will have your back, and you start actively cultivating the value you bring to the table.
Which ties perfectly into the text's second major insight on human nature, the fear of losing control. We assume people are driven by a fear of failure, but the text argues they are far more terrified of losing control over their environment.
And this reveals the true mechanism of influence. If you want to subtly control a situation or a person without using brute force, you don't overwhelm them with facts.
What do?
You manufacture a small amount of uncertainty. Because when human beings feel uncertain, their cognitive baseline crumbles, and they desperately scramble to find an anchor of stability.
We see this weaponized constantly today.
All the time.
Think about modern digital marketing or massive political campaigns. What is the actual underlying strategy? They manufacture anxiety.
Yes, they do.
They run ads telling you that your data is being stolen, your industry is becoming obsolete, your health is silently declining, or your entire way of life is under attack.
They artificially introduce a massive spike of uncertainty into your environment.
Exactly. And then, in the very next breath, they position themselves as the sole anchor of certainty. They sell you the cure to the disease they just convinced you that you have.
That is the exact psychological mechanism scaled up for the modern era.
It's wild to think about.
But when you realize that individuals, from paranoid emperors to modern consumers, will surrender almost anything, including their money and their autonomy, for a fleeting feeling of certainty, you stop falling for those manufactured traps.
You can see the matrix of workplace politics and consumer manipulation clearly.
You can choose when to be the anchor for someone else, rather than the one being manipulated by fear.
And navigating that matrix requires confronting the third and perhaps most uncomfortable insight from the text.
Which is?
Moral self-justification. We all drastically overestimate our own ethical fortitude.
Oh, absolutely.
The book delivers a stark warning. Never trust what people say they will do when things are calm. You only observe what they actually do when their money, their status, or their survival is directly threatened.
Because human beings possess a terrifying, almost limitless capacity to rationalize their own betrayals.
Hmm.
If a colleague throws you under the bus to save their own job during a round of layoffs, their brain will not allow them to be the villain of their own story.
No, they have to be the good guy.
They will automatically construct an intricate narrative where they were actually the victim, where you deserved it, or where they, simply had no other choice.
The text teaches you to discard people's idealized self-portraits. Observe their actions under pressure. That is the only valid data.
So we've established that the world is messy, relationships require constant transactional upkeep, and almost everyone is faking their moral high ground.
Yeah, pretty bleak.
But to really cement why Feng Dao's elasticity was so genius, we need to look at his foil. The source material tells the story of a man named Wang Pu, and his trajectory perfectly illustrates the tragedy of the good guy.
Okay, let's talk about Wang Pu.
He is the ultimate cautionary tale of rigidity. He was undeniably brilliant, a master strategist with a fierce, unyielding moral compass. He served the Emperor Chai Rong and was instrumental in drafting a grand, visionary strategy for unifying the splintered kingdoms.
And the emperor liked him.
Chai Rong, who was a strong and capable leader, deeply appreciated Wang Pu's bluntness and his uncompromising principles. They were a perfect match of temperament.
But then the inevitable happens. Chai Rong dies.
Right.
The throne passes to a new emperor, and this incoming ruler has an entirely different psychology. He does not have the same tolerance for Wang Pu's aggressive, rigid, blunt style.
And this is where Wang Pu seals his own fate. He refused to adapt his behavior to the new reality.
He just wouldn't bend.
He genuinely believed that his moral stance and his past contributions made him untouchable.
Wow.
Because of his absolute rigidity, he irritated the new emperor, who simply had him executed.
Just like that.
All of Wang Pu's brilliance, all of his moral superiority, and all of his grand plans for a unified, peaceful world died in the dirt with him. He changed absolutely nothing.
You know, it makes me think about technology infrastructure.
Okay, I'm listening.
Wang Pu was like a piece of brilliant, highly specialized proprietary software. He was perfectly coded to run on one very specific operating system, Emperor Chai Rong.
That's a great analogy.
But the moment the operating system updated to a new version, that proprietary software became entirely incompatible. It crashed and was deleted.
Right.
Whereas Feng Dao built his entire career like an open source protocol. He was designed from the ground up to integrate seamlessly into literally any new operating system that took over the hardware.
That is a phenomenal way to understand the difference between performative morality and substantive morality.
Performative versus substantive. Break that down.
Wang Pu, along with the countless orthodox historians who later criticized Feng Dao, practiced performative morality. They stood tall, refused to bend, and died as martyrs.
Which looks fantastic on paper.
It keeps your historical reputation pristine and allows you to feel incredibly self-righteous,
I agree.
functionally. They abandoned the common people. Their deaths served only their own egos.
So basically, being a martyr might get you a beautiful marble statue in the town square, but being a pragmatic survivor actually lets you put yourself in a position to save the people living in that town.
Exactly. Feng Dao operated on what we should call elastic principles. He willingly compromised on tactical, performative principles like pledging undying loyalty to a single violent warlord so that he could protect his overarching strategic principles.
Which were what?
His core unbending goal was to keep the bureaucratic engine running so the common people wouldn't starve, and to use his inner circle influence to minimize the slaughter of innocents.
So he actually did good.
Yes. There are multiple historical accounts of Feng Dao actively intervening to stop massacres because the emperors trusted his quote-unquote harmless advice. He bent in the wind so he could survive the storm and actually execute substantive good.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. How do we translate this ancient open source survival strategy into our lives today?
Because we need it.
We really do. Earlier, we talked about the 5 CEO company, but on a macro level, we are living in a broader modern 5 dynasties era. Look at the landscape right now.
It's chaotic.
We have rapid AI disruptions rendering entire skill sets obsolete in months. Legacy industries are evaporating overnight, and the social contracts of the workplace are fundamentally shifting under our feet.
In a landscape defined by chaotic disruption, your first imperative is building transferable assets.
Right.
Just as Feng Dao refused to be tied exclusively to the fate of one emperor, your skills, your industry wisdom, and your professional network cannot be tethered to a single platform, a single piece of software, or a single corporate entity.
Because if your entire professional value relies on knowing the proprietary coding language of a company that might go bankrupt or get acquired tomorrow, you haven't built a transferable asset.
You are Wangku waiting for the operating system to update.
I really want you, listening to this right now, to take a hard look at your own daily reality and audit your career.
Ask the hard questions.
Yeah, ask yourself the uncomfortable question. Are your skills tethered to one fragile boss who could be fired tomorrow? Are you dependent on one volatile industry? Or have you built yourself into a transferable asset, someone who can walk into a completely different ecosystem, assess the new rules, and immediately provide structural value?
Another critical modern application from the text is the concept of information deterrence.
So let's talk about that.
We discuss how Feng Dao gathered intelligence through strategic silence, but rarely weaponized it openly. In our modern economy, information is the ultimate currency, but people fundamentally misunderstand how to spend it.
Right, the natural impulse when you uncover a secret or gain leverage is to immediately use it to crush a rival or advance your position.
But the text argues the exact opposite.
Why?
Because the moment you deploy the secret, the weapon is spent, the damage is done, the chaos is unleashed, and you no longer hold any leverage. The true power of information is in deterrence. If a rival knows that you hold damaging information about them, and you simply let it sit there, unsaid but deeply understood, you create a chilling effect.
They will naturally accommodate you.
They'll step out of your way and grant you favorable terms out of a quiet, unspoken respect for the leverage you are actively choosing not to use. You don't just consume information, you manage it as a latent asset.
And that ties right back into how we manage our networks. We have to discard the notion that our professional and social relationships are static items we put in a storage unit.
Cool, for sure.
You can't say, oh, I helped them out on a project 3 years ago, they're in my network, they'll vouch for me.
That goodwill is completely depreciated.
The ecosystem requires continuous value exchange. Feng Dao survived 11 regime changes because whenever a new power structure violently emerged, he already had someone on the inside who owed him a fresh favor, trusted his recent input, or desperately needed his current expertise.
We have covered a massive amount of historical and psychological ground today, but the final synthesizing takeaway is crucial to understanding the text's true value.
Yeah.
Studying the Sharon Jing is not about reading a manual on how to become a toxic, backstabbing opportunist. That is a shallow misreading of the material.
It's not about endorsing cruelty, it's about waking up to reality.
Exactly.
The book provides a highly accurate, entirely unromanticized, topographical map of human nature. It tells you exactly where the psychological traps are, where the predatory behaviors hide, and where your own noble ideals might lead you into a dead end.
It is explicitly designed to keep you from running blindly off a cliff just because you trusted a flawed, idealized version of the world, instead of observing the brutal reality of how power actually operates.
Because if your goal is to genuinely change the world, or even just to protect your team and make your small corner of the industry slightly better, the absolute prerequisite is that you first have to survive it.
You cannot help anyone. You cannot execute your brilliant vision if you have already been metaphorically or literally taken off the board.
Exactly.
The ultimate wisdom here is that true strength is not about rigid defiance. True strength is knowing exactly when to bend, how to blend into the background, and never ever losing sight of your ultimate strategic direction while you do it.
I think that is the perfect lens through which to view this text. And I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day tomorrow. We've spent this entire deep dive exploring how true, resilient power often stems from masking your strength, acting as a quiet anchor of certainty in a sea of anxiety, and mastering the art of strategic silence.
It's a very different way of looking at power.
It is. So tomorrow, I want you to look around the room at your next major meeting. Observe your wider social circle. We are usually drawn to the loudest voice, right? The person aggressively leaning in and dominating the conversation.
Usually.
But based on everything we've learned from Feng Dao, is it possible that the most genuinely influential, dangerous, and strategic person in your life right now is actually the one who speaks the absolute least?
Wow.
Who around you is quietly gathering information, observing the chaos, and playing the Feng Dao strategy perfectly.
That is a lens that will fundamentally alter how you process your next workplace interaction. You will start seeing the underlying architecture of power everywhere.
Just remember, if you are frantically looking for the person pulling the strings, they almost certainly aren't the ones shouting at the front of the room. They're the ones sitting quietly in the back, just listening.